Federal agencies are being told to get ready for mass layoffs. So how much that's going to impact, I have no idea. But I'm telling you a few things. It is absolutely crazy. When you read online what you see from all the news that's out there, it goes from it's going to be the worst to no, this is good, and you cannot believe how much there is in between and from right to left, and you don't even know what to believe. So I looked at it because I saw a press conference today, and in the press conference they were talking about how there's all these remote employees that are basically just not showing up to the office. They don't even know where they are or what they do, and for a small number of cases, you're probably right. They just moved and still collecting salaries and doing all that. Wouldn't surprise me if you know how the government works, right? So when you're looking at all these news articles, so you're saying that claim that only 6% federal employees work in the office is false. And then you go and look and see actually what they're talking about. And they say, oh, we did some preliminary study and this was a self-survey. And then we've audited that survey. And all of a sudden it's like, no, it's more like 50, but then they're eligible. And then they use a trick on words. So at the end of the day, it's absolutely crazy. You do not know if these employees are in the office, if they're not in the office. It is just absolutely crazy. And from all these people that are in the office, this is going to be really interesting. So if you are a federal employee and you got to go back to the office, or any kind of employee, there's a term that you might know about, and that term is called coffee badging. So what is coffee badging? Coffee badging is basically when you go to work, you badge in and you basically stick around long enough so you can actually drink a coffee and have a few chit chats with your coworkers, and then you head back out, right? So here we go, and this is all these statistics, all these things. Don't attack me. I didn't take them. I know how biased they are because once you take in statistics, you know how crazy it can get and how they get the sample data and all these other ones, right? So according to a recent survey by Owl Labs, around 58% of hybrid workers in the US admit to coffee badging. So, meaning they briefly go to the office and then just grab a coffee, socialize before returning to work remotely for the majority of the day. This trend is particularly prevalent among hybrid government employees as well. So this is absolutely crazy, because when you look at it and it's like, hey, we do the coffee badging, we do all this stuff and productivity, and when I read through some of your comments, some say, oh, the brain can only work for 3 hours and all this kind of other things, and some say, oh, you know, all these layoffs is disguised, these aren't even real people. And then you look at it, it's like, holy shit, it's just across the whole government and across the United States. There's people that are so polarized with it and people that are like, oh my gosh, I hate this. And it's just going to frankly come down to what you believe and what you see in your surrounding. If you're surrounded by a bunch of government employees that are being let go, it's probably not that great. But if you're a blue collar worker and you're like, hey, I'm trying to make it, I'm just trying to do it, and I'm paying taxes and they're getting wasted, and that I do know that every 40 cents for every dollar in taxes you pay is just towards interest. You can't continue like that, right? Because every country can go bankrupt, right? Just because we're the biggest and baddest and spent the most on military, even we have problems, right? And if you go bankrupt, then all of a sudden there's way bigger things to come than just letting a few employees go, right? And if nobody wants the US dollars, then who's going to buy our debt, and who's going to do all kinds of trading and all this other stuff, right? So when you're looking at all these provocative, all these crazy things online, you got to think to yourself, what does that mean for you? And this has huge impacts for some of my viewers. And so I got an email from Tom. Thanks, I appreciate that you sending me these emails, because they not only affect you, they affect a lot of people. So Tom sent me an email saying basically that, hey, UnitedHealth is offering voluntary buyouts to 30,000 employees. This notice is going out to work in commercial health coverages, because then they're like, hey, UnitedHealth is sending out voluntary buyouts notices to some of its 40 440,000 employees, right? Buyouts to 30K employees. So yeah, so it is absolutely crazy. And when you do these buyouts, and I had a conversation with somebody the other day about these buyouts and all these things, it's like if you're at a certain spot in your career, if you're in your 60s, you're in your 70s, it's time to pass the torch on, right? And I talked about briefly about yesterday when you're in your 50s and you haven't really saved up for retirement and you're not ready yet. And then, your 60s come around and you haven't really invested in retirement and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to work till I die. And then you're like, hey, they offer us buyouts, they do all this other things. This might be a good opportunity for you to say, you know what, let me get some money, let me buy out and then move on. But it might be hard because you're of an age where it's like, hey, should be retired and all these other things. And so when I look at some of these government employees that I know, they're saying that, hey, instead of letting the young ones go, we should just make sure that these older ones actually retire and start enjoying it. And I just think once we're at a spot where we're like, hey, we're going to let people go, I think what they should do first is always make sure that these people that have retirement packages or are close to retirement, that they can, and say, hey, let's make some retirement packages and let those people go into retirement and say, hey, we're going to start paying out Social Security, we're going to do all that kind of stuff, and make sure that you're taken care of in retirement. But the big problem comes in that people can't retire and they don't have the money to do it. And when they are going to let go, it's going to be a real problem because they don't know how to live off of a fixed income. They don't know what they're going to do with their time. And I know people like that say, oh, I'm not even doing it for the money, but what am I going to do? I don't really like traveling. I don't really like going places. And just sitting at home all day or watching TV and doing all this other stuff when I retire is just not what I want to do, right? And there's people like that. And so then it's like, okay, you got to do retirement. And I saw some elderly person that said the big problems with retirement. I can't find the YouTube video. I was trying to link it, but I couldn't find it. He was basically talking about once you transition, and I'm just talking what he's basically saying, and I'm just kind of repeating it, because if you're retired, a whole new world begins. Your identity that in the US, it's so prominent, like, hey, you meet somebody, what do you do for work? And then it's like, it's almost like your job is somewhat of your identity, right? It's like, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a train driver, I'm a truck driver, hey, I'm a finance person, and hey, I do these things, right? And now all of a sudden a new part of life begins where it's like, hey, I'm gonna retire and nobody really cares what you did. And you're like, oh, now I'm retired and now now I'm retired, right? And so the problem really comes in when you can't do it, right? And when you're looking at all these buyouts, that might be a head start for you to be like, hey, let me take the buyout, let me be out of there, maybe work for a startup or do something else, or actually say, hey, let me explore the world. Let me go out and just live in Thailand a little bit, live in Asia. And, Thailand is Asia, right? But you get it. Live in Mexico, South America, and just travel a little bit, because you can travel fairly inexpensively in some of these places. And so those might be viable options, because I know a lot of people cannot retire anytime soon, even if they're being let go, right? Because of budgeting stuff, right? And as I said in my video yesterday, there's been people that have been going around on X that can't retire because during their 50s, they're like, oh, I just turned 50 and I have $900 to my name. And this is a complete failure for society, for basically the school system, that, hey, what we should have taught our people is that, hey, you should start investing. You should own something. You should own stocks, bonds. And yeah, if you lose it all, that happens, right? But when you're 50, it's just kind of late. And when you're looking at all these layoffs that are going to go on, it's going to really put pressure on these people that are in the job market, right? Because every layoff is going to be brutal for you to compete. And I saw Apple said, hey, we're going to hire, I think, 20,000 people, right? And so all these layoffs that happen, and Apple's going to say, we're going to hire 20,000 people over, I think, the next 8 years or something. So a few thousand people a year. So what happens to that? That means that there's going to be so many applications being flooded to Apple that it's going to be really, really difficult to stand out and really, really difficult to get an interview, right? So if you're in your 60s or 70s and you're like, I'm really worried about all this kind of stuff, but I still need to work, and you're like, I'd always wanted to work for Apple, it's going to be harder for you to do that, because then they say, oh, they got another 2 years in them or something, and you get the ageism, what shouldn't exist, right? But when you hire people, it's just something that you have in the back of your head, right? And yeah, if you're a vice president and you got all these skills, they might make an exception, right? Almost like Congress, where they wheel you in with a wheelchair just because you got the votes, you got the money, you got all this other stuff, right? So it's a fairly interesting world that we're running into with these layoffs, with these buyouts, with people that are, hey, I have healthcare issues. Healthcare's letting people go, so they're going to have problems because, hey, once they're going to let people go, they're not going to say, you know what, we just let's say 5,000 people go. That means that we can now save some money and we can pay out more claims. No, what that means is just that the rest of the people just have to pick up the slack and do more and the same pay, even not if less pay, because you got to do more now. And then they say, if you don't like it, then just leave. And they probably won't even replace you. They just let your team do it, right? They just say, you know what? Let's just have the team actually go out and do way, way more work because we can, and it is the economy of layoffs. So you like it or you don't, and you just deal with it, right? So this is just crazy. And I'm telling you, if you are in a situation where there might be layoffs, it is just time to start networking. You don't have to send out resumes, you don't have to do this, but join something. Join a group in your career field and just start networking and just start being generous. Nothing bad has ever come to that. And if there has something, let me know in the comments below, because I'm eager to hear what you guys have to say with that. But yeah, it is just crazy. And for all these people that moved away during COVID and said, like, I'm going to be a federal employee, or I moved away and now it's back to the office, because not everybody quite yet is back. So it's going to be real interesting in probably in a few months, 6 months, to see how congested downtown areas are, because all these employees, all these big federal buildings are going to be packed with people again, because you can't do it remotely. You got to do it in person. And the funny part is that remote really does work. It really has its benefits, but it also has its cons, where you lose sight of employees and they're not there for team culture. So I can see where this is going, and depending on who's on the ship and who's the captain, you either like it or you hate it, or it's like, it doesn't matter to me. I'll be here today, I'll be here tomorrow, and if there's something different, then we'll just deal with that when it comes. And I really, really hope that everybody that watches my channel is somewhat prepared and not get hit in the face with a letter saying, hey, you're done. Because from those 2 million federal employees, only 1 million have sent out the 5 bullet points of what they did last week. And you can actually look online, and I thought, hey, maybe I should send that out, Maybe I should respond and say, this is what I've done. Because you can just reply to that email address. Not saying you should, but you can, and see if they'll fire me, Might be something funny to do. I'm not recommending it though. But yeah, like if you wrote them, like, hey, if you have a shop, like a machine shop or something, be like, this is what I've done. And you send them an email and be like, yeah, advise me for some feedback. It'd be pretty cool to get an email back if you don't work for the federal government from Elon Musk saying you're fired. Yeah, probably print it out, put it on the wall or something. That'd be hilarious if you're not working for the federal government. If they do come back and say you're fired, it's gonna really suck. But yeah, that's the times we're living in, and I don't make the rules. I just go with the tide. I'm trying to be as smooth sailing as possible. And that's why I make these videos. I'm trying to help you understand what I see, because I talk to job seekers every day in, day out. And yeah, rounds of interviews take longer. when, from, hey, you got the job to signing the offer letter takes longer. So yeah, so keep what you got. It's not the time. This section right here, coming up here, I think the next few months, I'm telling you, it's not the time to say, oh, then I'll just leave and find something else. This is not the time. If they say you got to stay an hour longer, you stay an hour longer. If they want you to work harder, because it's going to be a lot tougher to find a job than it is to just stick around and then wait till the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And then jump ship, right? So let me know what you guys think about all this. If you haven't, please like and subscribe. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Is this something that makes sense? Is this something that's like, nah, you know what? Where I'm at in my field, this is not even the case. And I'd love to hear it, because yeah, if that's not your case in your field, then hey, let me know. And yeah, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. Tom, I appreciate it that you send me these emails. Everybody else, thanks for being a channel member. For those who are, I really appreciate it. And yeah, look at how gorgeous it is in Vegas today. It's like 70, 75, almost 80. Amazing weather. That's why I moved here, and for better opportunities. So I will see you guys in the next one.